What's going on, guys? Today I wanted to bring you another one of my 2014 WCQ hat format deck profiles. The deck I wanted to bring you today is a deck that I got requested quite a handful of times. People really wanted me to show off my list for that, and that is 3.5 Axis Fire Fist. So this is the more level 3 focused Fire Fist build. It'll make more sense once we actually get into the deck profile. And yeah, no, I think this deck is really cool. I think it's definitely a rogue option for the format as compared to a lot of the meta contenders, but this can definitely take games off of those top decks, and it is very powerful. So I'm excited to actually show this off. So without further ado, let's get straight into this list. So starting off with the monsters, we play one copy of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Spirit. Unfortunately, this card is only at 1 in this format, or we would be playing more of this for sure. What it does is it can't be used for the synchro summon of a monster except for a Beast Warrior type monster. When it's normal summoned, you can target a level 3 fire monster in your graveyard with 200 or less defense and special summon that target in defense position. And if you do that, you can't attack with monsters except for Beast Warriors for the rest of the turn, and you can only use that once per turn. It is a tuner, and it does kind of combo really well with some of your other cards that we will get into, but really good card. It's very searchable as well, similar to like all the Fire Fist monsters in general. Next, to pair with that, we play 3 copies of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Leopard. This one on normal or special summon during the main phase, you contribute a Fire Fist monster and set a Fire Formation spell or trap directly from your deck, and you can only use that effect once per turn. Usually you'll be tributing this off, and say you had a tanky or something, you would be searching the spirit, and then with this you would then go and set a Tensu, and then you can summon the spirit, special summon back the leopard, and synchro summon. So it's a really important card to get into your engine. After that, 2 copies of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Rooster. This card is really good. You don't want to play 3 because it can be a little cloggy. It's okay to open this in your opening hand, but ideally you want to be summoning this card off of your Horse Prince, which is a synchro monster that we'll get into a bit later. What this card does is when it's special summoned by the effect of a Fire Fist monster, you're able to add a Fire Fist monster from deck to hand, and you can only use that effect once per turn. And then you're able to target a face-up Fire Formation spell or trap you control, send it to the graveyard, and set a different Fire Formation spell or trap from your deck. That part of the effect where it can cycle your Fire Formation spell and traps is really strong. And the other thing is that effect is not once per turn. So in theory, if you have multiple roosters and multiple Fire Formation spell or traps face up, you can kind of cycle through multiple. So that's really cool. The one downside with this card specifically is it has 100 defense, which is unfortunate. I'll talk a little more into that later on. Next, for the level 4 aspect, we play 3 Bear. This card needs no explanation. Being able to get rid of Fire Formation spell and traps to pop monsters is really good, as well as when it inflicts damage, being able to set Fire Formation spell or traps from your deck. 1 copy of Gorilla. This is kind of like your MST, and when it kills a monster in battle, you're able to set one of your Fire Formation spell or traps. 1 copy of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Boar. A lot of people don't know of this card, and I think this card is really crazy, and it's used in some pretty cool combinations. Once we get into some of the spell cards I choose, this is almost an OTK with some of the other cards. What it does is it can't be used for a synchro summon except for a synchro summon of a fire monster, which is irrelevant for this build specifically. But the part that does matter is when it's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a level 4 Fire Fist monster from your deck, except itself, And then once per turn, when a Fire Fist monster is special summoned from your extra deck, you're able to set a Fire Formation spell card directly from your deck. So one thing to note with this card is the effect that says when it's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, being able to special summon a Fire Fist level 4. That part of the effect is not once per turn. So in theory, if you're able to cycle through these, you can summon multiple Fire Fist monsters, and there is a way to actually do that, which I'll explain a little later on. But yeah, being able to just crash this into a monster and get access to Bear or Gorilla for that matter is really, really cool. After that, that's it for the Fire Fist. We play the Honorary Fire Fist, 1 copy of Wolfbark, 1 copy of Fencing Fire Ferret. This card is actually really cool. It's kind of like a fire hand that doesn't miss timing, but it also doesn't special summon anything. The other part of the effect is when it does destroy a monster, you'll also be inflicting 500 damage to your opponent. It's not a lot, but it is really cool. This also combos with some of the spell cards we play that I will get into in a little bit. And the last monsters I play are 2 copies of Max C. This deck can struggle against some of the combo decks, and it can also have a bit of a problem against things like DD Crow. So Maxi just insulates some of your plays and allows you to stop your opponent if they're on combo decks, as well as gain more advantage through the means of drawing cards. So really strong there. Moving on to the spell cards, we play 3 copies of Fire Formation Tenki. Obviously, this is your searcher for all your Fire Formation monsters, as well as giving them a small attack boost. 2 copies of Fire Formation Tensu. This card is a double summon and also gives them a small boost. Really, really good card in this deck. I definitely think you should be playing 2. 3 is a little cloggy, and 1 just isn't enough. After that, we play 1 copy of Fire Formation Gyoku. This is kind of like a Night Beam that doesn't destroy. Basically, you activate it by targeting a spell or trap card your opponent controls, and then your opponent can't activate the targeted card in response to this card's activation. And while it's face up on the field, that set card can't be activated. So it's a good way to stop your opponent from activating some of that back row, and it's searchable, so that's really nice. And it also gives the small attack bonus. After that, we play 3 copies of Instant Fusion. This card is just so good. Having an extra extender in this deck is really important, and there's some cool combos you can do with some of the other cards that we will get into, as well as Instant Fusion plus Tenki is now kind of your whole Horse Prince combo line. So just really, really good. And so this next part of the deck is where it gets a little interesting, because there are other builds of Fire Fist in H.A.T format, and I'll probably profile those later on at some point. But even though we're not playing Fire Kings in this deck, I do choose to play 2 copies of Onslaught of the Fire Kings and 2 copies of Circle of the Fire Kings. So here's where we'll get into talking a bit about that boar and the Fire Fencing Ferret. Sorry about the glare there. I'll try to move these over a little bit. So what Onslaught does is if your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, you can special summon a Fire, Wing Beast, Beast, or Beast Warrior from your deck, but its effects are negated and it's destroyed during your end phase. So this card allows you to play going second a lot better, since it's basically E-Telly for your fire monsters. It even can count as removal. For example, if you use this and summon your Fire Fencing Ferret, this card cannot miss timing because it's an if effect, which is really key. It's really cool being able to do that, but now Instant Fusion plus this is also a starter. Another thing is with Circle of the Fire Kings. What this card does is you target a fire monster you control and a fire monster in your graveyard, destroy the monster you control, and then special summon the other monster from the graveyard. So because this is a quick play, it allows you to dodge some of your opponent's things. For example, their breakthrough skills, or even things like compulse and different things. This just helps you dodge cards, which is why this is really important. So going back to the boar, what you can do is summon this, crash it into a monster, summon like, for example, bear, attack over the monster. If it does some damage, set a fire formation card. Then you can circle, get rid of the bear, summon this back, and attack again and do more damage, as well as if they had another monster, you could potentially crash this into that monster and get another summon. So that is really, really cool. I really like this in the deck, and again, it just combos so well with, if you see like Onslaught plus Circle going second, it's so strong. Next, we play 2 Lance and 2 MST. If you've been watching my channel, you know this is just my standard ratio. Theoretically, you could cut one of them and just play 3 of your choice of them. I just prefer this route in a lot of my decks. 2 copies of Soul Charge and 1 copy of Dark Hole. And that is it for the spells. One thing to note is I chose not to play Rekindling in this deck, which people might think is weird, but a lot of builds from this time period actually chose not to, specifically in more topping lists as well. And the reason that is because looking at the whole deck, the only targets for Rekindling you have are your 3 Leopard and your 1 copy of Spirit. And as I mentioned previously, this deck is very susceptible to things like DD Crow, so it kind of just gives more reliance on that, where something like Soul Charge is more generic, so you can get into your stuff more, because again, Rekindling has to summon with 200 defense fire monsters, so that's also why I mentioned that the copies of Rooster are unfortunate that they gave it 100 defense, because you can't Rekindling those back. In theory, you could definitely play it, but I would still suggest playing the 2 Soul Charge, so maybe cut something like one of those Lances or MSTs and play the 3rd of the other, and that's how you would get that through. Moving on to the traps, 3 copies of Breakthrough Skill. Because of the Fire Formation cards giving attack bonuses, this deck can be kind of rough against things like Ragna Zero, as well as since you have a lot of continuous spell and traps, or I should say continuous spells, you also become more susceptible to Exciton and stuff, so 3 Breakthrough Skill is really strong, and then 1 copy of Bottomless, 1 Torrential, and 1 Warning to round out the deck. I believe that's 40 or 41. If you want to cut down on 1 card, like I said, do the Lance and MST thing, or I've considered even cutting a Bear, but I think right now this is just the best ratios. Moving on to the extra deck, 2 copies of Brotherhood of the Firefist Horse Prince. This card is so good. Again, it's for your main combo with Spirit and Leopard. What this does is it needs a Fire Tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monster. When it's synchro summoned, you can special summon a level 3 fire monster from your deck, so that would summon your copy of Rooster, which would then get the effect to search, and then after it's synchro summoned, you can't special summon level 5 or higher monsters for the rest of the turn. Again, irrelevant, just it's such a strong card to cycle that out, and again, if you have a Fire Formation spell or trap on your field, you can then use the Rooster, cycle it for something else. Next, 1 copy of Vulcan the Divine. This card basically, when it's synchro summon, you target a face-up card on your field and 1 on your opponent's, bounce them to the hand, and then your opponent is unable, or both of you are unable to activate cards with those effects for the rest of the turn, I believe is what the effect is for that part of it. So really, really good card to recycle resources and things, and it is a Beast Warrior, so it gets around the Spirit lock. Moving on to the Xyz, 1 Kagetsuchi. Just having built-in protection on itself and being a Beast Warrior is very important. 1 copy of Brotherhood of the Firefist Tiger King. The reason we only play 1 in this deck is because most people play this to tutor out a fire formation spell or trap, and this deck already has so many cards that do that, so that part of it is sort of irrelevant. The relevant part is the negating part of its effect, and the effect that technically you can send the fire formation spell or traps to summon 2 Fire Fists with the same attack, which your targets would be Bear and Gorilla. So this card isn't super necessary in the deck, honestly, and you can technically recycle it as well. I'll talk about that in the future in a little bit. So just 1 is fine. Then we just have generic stuff. 1 101, 1 Heartland Draco, 1 Diamond Direwolf, 1 Exciton, 1 Cardinal. This card is super crazy. It needs 2 Fire Fist monsters to summon it. And then you can detach 2 materials from it, target 2 Fire Fist or Fire Formation cards on your field or in the graveyard, shuffle them back into the deck, and then do the same for your opponent's cards on their field or graveyard. So really, really strong card. Again, that's how you can recycle some of your Fire Formation and Fire Fist monsters and spell and traps. Really good card. 1 Dweller and 1 Rhapsody in Berserk. Then for the rank 3, I play 1 Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Lion Emperor. This card needs 2 level 3 fire monsters to summon, and once per turn you detach a material from it, target a fire monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand, and also you cannot normal or special summon that monster or a monster with the same name for the rest of the turn, but this is a way to get back your spirit and things, to get, just play that you can do for next turn pretty much. And lastly, we do have the instant fusion targets, which is 1 Cherubin, the Fire Knight. It is a fire, so you can use it to go into this if need be. And the other one is Dark Fire Dragon. Not really any specific reason other than it being a level 4 for the most part in this build. But that is it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about siding or other decks and things you want to see, gameplay and such, definitely let me know in the comment section. And anyways, guys, I will see you in the next video.